Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Gyeongseong Creature, Season 1, Episode 6. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we finally get even more insight into Jang, in particular, why he is the way he is, why he's so obsessed about staying safe, and why it always seems like he's built a life for himself. I mean, for one, we already kind of understood. It's like, right, when you've gone from rags to riches type of situation, when you've made a life for yourself, of course you're going to want to keep that because you know what it's like to not have that. But it's deeper than that. It's an imprint from his mom telling him to no matter what, stay safe, you have to live. And so he followed that. He thought he was adhering to what his mom wanted by building this life for himself. He started with nothing. I mean, and a heartbreaking thing is, that having nothing is actually how he met Miss Noel. Like, he's outside of the place they were holding her and torturing, because they beat his mom because I guess she had some connection to maybe some Korean resistance group that was kind of pushing back, or at least she was a contact for someone that was a part of it. So she was definitely in the mix. So I'm assuming that's also where Jang's like reluctancy to join that type of cause comes from too, because it's like, that cause took my mom away from me, and for what purpose? Like, you can't. This is all of the life I've ever known is under a Japanese control, and why you can't change that. No matter what you do, all it does is get people killed. I think that actually influences some of the conversations he has later on in the episode, but we'll get to those when we get to it. But I just think it's so heartbreaking that, that we had seen that shot before, maybe like 2 episodes ago, of him out there in the snow. That's him waiting outside the facility trying to get any word about his mom, and Miss Nawal was thrown out. Like, they had pumped, I guess, like, tortured her for information, which all the stuff she was bringing up to Gapyeong, where it's like, have you ever had your fingernails removed, had water mixed with chili pepper poured up your nose while you're upside down, like electric chairs and stuff like that. She went through the ringer, dude. But because she was trying to tell Gapyeong, like, hey, if you ever get caught and you're tortured, immediately give them everything they want, because at the end of the day, don't ruin your life in the process, and she's like, I won't even blame you. But he was like, no, you're my family, I'm not going to turn on you, because she has trust issues. She's like, I don't trust people easily, I don't even trust myself, because of that situation of, like, being tortured. Anyone, you like to believe you'd be able to not sell out anyone, especially when it's such a big cause, because I'm assuming Nawal was part of what Miss Nawal was a part of one as well. I'm assuming that's why she was being questioned and stuff and tortured, part of a Korean resistance group. But at the end of the day, that's why she's like, I don't even trust myself, because I thought I could handle it. I was down for the cause, and she not immediately, because who knows what she went through, but the fact that she even caved at all makes her kind of have, I think that line kind of says, like, there is still some self-hatred there, of like, oh yeah, like, I sold out, I told whatever information I needed to say just to save and spare my own life, which I think is kind of ironic, considering Gapyeong's having this whole conversation with her about not ratting them out. He's going to keep that, which obviously is foreshadowing in some capacity that he's most likely going to find himself in that situation. But the question is, will he actually keep his word? He'll probably think back to this promise and decide to. But once again, it's easier said than done when you're not in the middle of being tortured. But I think that's also the juxtaposition with all that conversation happening, and then we have Juntae, like, not even really being tortured. I mean, granted, maybe they're depriving him of food or whatever, or maybe it's just the natural fear of being tortured or dissected, because he's like, yeah, they're not even torturing him. The guy made a whole point, but it's psychological of make him go like, oh yeah, but I will, like, dissect you on this table. So that fear of what could be, and you don't want to get hurt. You think you're down for this cause, but you're not. I also misspoke in the previous episode. For whatever reason, I thought his dad was the leader, but it's like, no, his dad's just a powerful businessman. That's all it is. His dad and the leader he was taking orders from are 2 different people. For whatever reason, I was correlating them as the same person last episode, but believe they're not the same person. But either way, I think that, like I said, they just tied him up to the cell. They haven't done anything to him, but maybe it could be a thing of, with the light on him, the psychological fear, plus maybe they weren't giving him any water or food, like, so it's enough to kind of make you cave. And he gave them everything, not only the people he broke into the prison with and what their reasons for, but even the hierarchy, or at least the larger group of the group that he's a part of, like the organization itself. He gave it up and its members. So I think that's the interesting juxtaposition of, like, nothing was done to him, but it was still another form of torture. It just wasn't the brutal one that Noel is warning Gyeongseong about, or having gone through herself. But like, tying this back into Jang, he went over to her, gave her some water or whatever drink he had, plus a little food, because he's asking, like, do you know my mom? And she's like, no, I don't. And he's like, okay, like, because he just doesn't know whatever happened to his mom. Because that time, when his mom's last words to him, as he says later on, was the last time he ever saw his mom. And so I think that's what ended up bringing Miss Noel and him together. It's such a sad moment, bro. I mean, I think that's also why she feels the motherly need to look after him, because it's like, right, either that might also be a role in this, where she feels like, because I ratted out my organization or group, that led to her getting grabbed. It's just the consequences of it. And once again, like, you're being tortured, like, you're being put through all this pain. Of course, it's going to take a toll on you, and you're eventually going to cave. And I think maybe that's what that scene's supposed to imply. Or maybe it's just kind of like, oh, sad that this little boy's on his own. But I feel like it's probably even more pertinent if we find out the information she gave out after being tortured led to his mom getting grabbed and tortured. So maybe that's even more so why she cares about him so much. I don't know if Jang ever associated that, ever figured that out, or maybe I'm adding too much context. Maybe that's not the context at all. Maybe it's just like, hey, you're alone in this world, I'm alone in this world. That's why I figured that's how this whole golden treasure thing started, because they're all alone in this world and they found each other. We haven't gotten into Gyeongseong or Bimyo's like situation of how they both got mixed up in this, but kind of having this insight into how Miss Noel and Jang ended up meeting was kind of interesting, especially when you have the larger context of the circumstances. And once again, how indicative it is of who they are present day. Her approach to wanting to be very over motherly towards Jang, but also his need to try and stay alive. And speaking of Jang, present day, we have him meeting, well, the people that escaped the prisoners that escaped the subjects, which there's a lot more of them than I thought. I kept being like, oh, maybe barely double digits. It's like, no, 9 of them died when they were getting shot at, and it's like, yeah, a good chunk of them were still alive. I don't know the exact number, but I'm saying, like, oh, it must have been at least 20 or something that were, because there are at least like maybe a dozen left even after those 9 were killed. So it's got to be like at least 20 plus people. So I was like, wow, there's a lot more people that survived. I guess that's also just representative of just how many people died, because a lot of people died. But it could also be like in that time frame, maybe they grabbed more people. I don't know. But either way, Jang showed up just as they had killed quite a few people, and he ends up killing the Japanese soldiers that were about to kill everyone. It's like, yeah, he saved the day. It's like none of that would have happened. 9 people are dead because they didn't wait for Jang. And but after the fact, the creature shows up. He tells everyone to kind of run, and he's helping the dude who had gotten shot, and like they're carrying him, and Comrade Lee is helping as well. But yeah, the creature ends up killing the guy, and Jang unloads every bullet he's got in the rifle as well as like the pistol, but then he uses the nitrogen to like hide their escape. But I'm also like, I didn't even think about it until the spores start popping. I was like, right, the defense mechanism, right? Okay, good. You're not in that area. Luckily, everyone that was left there who's getting hit by the spores is already dead, luckily. But I was like, man, I keep forgetting about that spore, which is basically floating anthrax defense mechanism that this creature has. But yeah, later on, Jang chews that guy out because he's like, you should have waited for me. It's like, yeah, that guy should have, but he didn't trust Jang. The irony is, the guy that died, the one who was like, oh, I'd rather die than have you kill me, I'm gonna get out here no matter what, that guy, he's the one that was talking mad shit about Jang. It's like, right, you're a rich guy who only cares about himself. And it's like, really? I told you to just wait for me. Why couldn't you trust me? But it's like, you're so flippant. You are rich and you've never really done anything to help, Gyeongseong that's been occupied by Japan. You haven't really done anything to help anyone despite people suffering and stuff like that. And he's like, oh wait, I'm a bad person just because I didn't join your cause. He was like, yeah, you're a fit sitter in the grand scheme of things. And he was even going on about how he's like, I just wanted to get the hell out of here. That's all it is. Once again, fear will make you do stuff you shouldn't do, because Jang is like, you didn't have a plan. Did you really think just getting out of cells? You're in a hospital building you don't know the layout of, because you were most likely blindfolded when you brought in. You don't know the layout of this building. The place is overrun with soldiers. How did you think you were just going to get out on your own? So you should have trusted I would come back, but you refused to trust in me because I wouldn't join like this Korean cause. You don't know my circumstances. You're making assumptions about me. You know, it's like, right, just because I didn't join this cause, it makes me a bad person. But it's like, no, because you're a fence sitter, because you refused to join the cause, even though June Tae kept pushing you to do it, which once again I think is so ironic on multiple fronts. One, you're not so down for the cause because you refused to give June Taek the information about the bombs last episode because you were in self-preservation mode, you and Home Dude. So it's like you're a hypocrite, you know? Once again, I understand your hypocrisy. It's still, you got to recognize the hypocrite that you are, that you're chewing out Jang for like, oh, that he can't be trusted. It's like, Connor, you couldn't be trusted either. Because hey, at least Jang did come back. That's also the irony too. The guy that was talking shit about him, it's like, if it wasn't for, granted, you ended up dead anyway, but it's like, Jang actually saved your life. That's why in that moment, he's like, oh man, I probably shouldn't be talking all that shit about Jang. He actually came back. He actually saved my life when I was literal centimeters away from a gun to my head, because I was like, I'd rather die than stay in this hell. But the guy was saying like, yeah, wasn't it, like I said, I guess he was like Comrade Lee, but he was like, those sacrifices were inevitable. It's like, don't take those sacrifices for granted because they didn't need to happen. You ran, you had the key and everything. All you had to do was wait, but you refused to. You were only looking out, like, yes, I get it, you are afraid, but you weren't really too concerned on everyone else. It was more so about self-preservation in your own part. You were scared about your own life. You know, yes, you let the other people out because you knew how much of an asshole you'd be if you left them behind. So, but it was still about you letting yourself out and trying to get away. And all those deaths are on you. It's like, Jun Taeyuk told me that you were someone of conviction. He was sorely mistaken. And you see the guy kind of fall down because, like, yeah, he wanted to try and justify it. It's like, don't try and use those sacrifices as a means of, like, don't try to justify your faults in your character that you didn't, like, you let fear dictate how you moved. You shouldn't have, because you didn't have a plan. You know, and all those people's deaths are on you because they're not sacrifices. Those are unnecessary deaths that are on you. And he couldn't really say much else because what Jang said to him hit true, and he knew it. Especially because he's about this cause about protecting Korea and fighting for Korea, and it's like, right, I was full steam ahead just because I need to get out of here. It wasn't about what was better for the larger group of people. Then we have Cheok's dad showing up, Jung Won, who obviously Jang ends up telling him about, okay, Cheok is looking for her mom. She was here. Who knows if she's still here? But he's like, okay, I understand. But he's like, Mr. Jang, like, I knew, like, despite your outward, like, output, like, I know that you would do the right thing in the end. And look at all these people you helped save. You went back for them. I know at the end, because he was like, I'm sorry, I wish I could have gone with her. It's like, no, you played your part and all these people are safe now because of you. So Jang tells him, like, go to the medical ward where they used to keep tuberculosis patients. Like, no one will kind of come there for you, so sit there for a couple of hours. I will find Cheok. And he made a promise. It's so interesting, too, because that opening of the episode revolves around promises. He's like, maybe it was dead. Maybe it was at this point. But he's like, I shouldn't have made that promise. Because, he is someone that once he makes a promise, he sticks to it. And he did that promise to his mom all those years ago. And he tried to live the best he could by that. So, but yeah, Jang is off looking for Cheok. And at the same time, she's confronting Colonel Kato, and he ends up revealing to her, yes, the monster is your mom. And it's like, how could you do that, and he was like, oh, like it's a beautiful being and yada yada yada. It's like, you can't kill it because I wouldn't even want you to, so why would I tell you how to actually kill it? But he ultimately does, because it turns out fire is the only way. I didn't even correlate it, because it makes sense. Once again, I'm pulling from the series Sweet Home, both the webtoon and the TV show. Fire is a big contributing factor in killing those monsters, which have crazy healing factors. But it's because I was also pulling from that, because Jung-won ended up attacking it and it seemed fearful of fire. But it was also, they show a flashback. They're like, right, the creature from episode 1 when they were burning the place down was dying by fire. I mean, it was left in it. I mean, granted, the building exploded, sure, but you saw it burning in the distance. So it was like, I should have correlated that, but I didn't think about that at the time. Also, we got confirmation that she did not drink it. It's still in a cup. I was so hoping she would shove it down his throat. Because the way he talks about it is, once again, this creature takes over your head. It like, basically, it's a parasite that goes to your brain and takes over it. I guess, very much in I mean, it's not a one-to-one because it's a different thing. We're talking about a fungus / mushroom. Talking about it, like, correlate it to something else that came out this year, the Last of Us TV show, in the concept of, like, the cordyceps and stuff. But it's like, that's a fungus / mushroom versus, like, this, whatever it is. We haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty of what this thing is that he made and how it came to be. I don't know if they'll ever really go that deep into it. I mean, there's, like, 4 episodes left in just show in totality, depending on if there's going to be a season 2 or not. But there's still room to cover that if they want to. But at the end of the day, I was just kind of hoping she would turn him. Just that'd be the perfect, not even irony, but perfect symbolism of all the experimentations that were had because of him, and he gets turned into the very thing he made. But then you probably have him turn into an unkillable monster. I mean, that's if he doesn't end up being a complete and utter disaster. He seems like the type of person that's like, yeah, I'll eventually use it on myself to see. It's like, oh, like if his creature dies, he'll become the next creature just so. It's like, right, this can continue on. It's like, I will continue on as this beautiful entity. It hasn't crossed his mind yet, but I mean, when push comes to shove, maybe that'll be his last, like, desperate gambit, is to transform into that. We'll see. But sadly, Chayaka ends up getting knocked out, and when she wakes up, she's chained to the floor because they're trying to draw the monster to her. Because I guess he thinks that if he can, because it's like, right, the monster won't even recognize you as her daughter. She hasn't seen you in 10 years, right? I guess he was hoping that, like, by, I guess, twofold. He wanted to show he had such control over the creature. 2, it killing her own, like, forcing the monster to kill its own daughter is almost like a thing of, right, you fully are mine. You are completely under my control. And also, it's also to, I think, break Chayaka a little bit, just by being like, yeah, this is your own mother, see what I made her into, and she will be the one that ends up killing you. There's a little bit of that, because obviously the soldiers want to kill this thing, but he doesn't want it killed, he wants it captured. But when the time comes, it doesn't kill Chayaka, because her voice reached out to her in that moment. I love how they depicted it too. We see flashbacks of Chayaka as a little girl, and it's so blurry, but then the vision, like, clears up, and it's just like, yeah. We even see the memory when Chayaka gave her mom the necklace she's wearing right now. And in the end, like, Kato was not happy, because it's like, wait, you're not killing her, go and do it. It's like, fine, fire. And it kind of went full Groot and ended up protecting Chayaka. And ended up killing some of the guards, pushed past some of the nitrogen that was being used against it, and ended up killing some of those people too. Obviously, like, it's taking those bullets, obviously, but the nitrogen eventually got to it, which I'm, like, concerned about, because once again, that floating spore anthrax in the air, but luckily Jang snuck by, because that medical student soldier was like, he made a point to, like, let Jang know, like, hey, sir, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna let this creature kill this woman? So that let him know where she was. So he got down there and took her, and obviously he learned from her the truth about what happened. It's like, yeah, my mom was turned into that thing. and he ends up giving her some caramel because in the previous episode that's how he distracted those soldiers. I guess caramel's very hard to come by, maybe. Um, but he gave her some. He's like, I know I'm not going to ask you if you're okay because I know you're not, but I hope that you will eventually feel better. He's like, I was 9 years old when my mom said those final words to me to stay alive. And as a 9-year-old, I didn't really know and really fully understand the weight of what it meant to grow up without a mom, you know? But he's like, what we can do is we can get out of here and then we can find out another plan, you know? It's just, and for because it's like, what else can you say in that situation? He knows what it's like to be in a situation. Like, it's like, hey, I it was bad enough when I lost my mom at such a young age, but like you lost your mom at a young age, and when you finally find her after all these years, you held out like you were desperate to find her, and ultimately you would have given up, but then you found this piece of from Sachimoto being like, oh, like you got this picture and it proved your mom was still out there somewhere. Then you find out she was here. You were still holding on to that hope, and that hope turned into despair. I'm sounding very like Nagito from not Nagito, Nagito from Danganronpa 2. But either way, well, to be fair, that's Danganronpa as a whole turning hope into despair. But that was kind of his bag in particular. But I digress. With the medical students' help, they were able to get some uniforms and eventually meet up with Jungwon and the other survivors. So it's like everyone's kind of reunited. Eventually, she's gonna have that conversation with her dad, but probably right now isn't the time to have that. But we'll see how that all plays out. But obviously, at this point, Kato, he wanted her potentially alive because once again, he thought maybe there's something genetic in her that it's like, right, if Chalk's mom is able to become this creature and survive, then maybe it's something in her DNA that would allow her as well. But now it's like, oh, actually, you're a hindrance to what I'm trying to create because this creature will never fully. There will be some form of humanity. You're still able to reach your mom inside. It's like, yeah, you need to die. So it's like, yeah, that soldier who already wanted to kill her before got the green light to finally kill her now. So it's like, oh yeah, so let's go out, find her. So we also had Ichiro beating the crap out of that soldier Soma because it's like, oh, you failed. This was supposed to be your jurisdiction. You're supposed to like look after these cells. And it's like if a single one of those Josians ends up escaping, it's going to be not only your intestines, but your family's intestines on the table because he's like, I will gut them. So that gave Soma all the reason he needed because he ends up grabbing Myeongja and ends up taking off, and he ends up meeting up with the others in that tuberculosis ward later on. So he's like, yeah, I need to get out of here too. Because it's like, yeah, I'm not sticking around anymore because if anything goes wrong, like I've already kind of set in motion down this path. If I try, my family's going to be in danger, so I need to get out of here, need to stay here, need to like be away from all this and be set up so that me and my family will be okay. Because, yeah, this is kind of a no-go now. Because Ichiro's also dealing with the fact is that, well, Maeda tried to call him because she got a message saying like, hey, the rescue of Akiko is happening, which I'm curious why. Because obviously we see Miss Noir going around and like gathering up all the allies. Like Jung Taeok's dad, they approached him last episode. We see him approaching Ishikawa because they can't go to him because I guess it's like, well, there's a little bit of conflict of interest, and if it's coming from them, they won't. I don't think Ishikawa knows this all connects to the hospital in some shape or form, but I don't think he would have listened to anyone from Golden Treasure, but someone of reputation like Jung Taek, it's enough. Well, even that wasn't fully enough until he dropped the fact is that, hey, Myeongja is there along with my son and Jang. Jang kind of dragged my son into all this, so all I want is my son back. So they got Ishikawa on board. He kind of like files a like official investigation So obviously he didn't find anything, but that was kind of part of it, I guess, to kind of keep Ichiro and them kind of more focused on that, keep at least some of the group dispersed a little. But like I said, why let Maeda know? Like letting her, maybe she was supposed to keep well, they don't know about her and Ichiro being connected in that regard, because she immediately tried calling Ichiro, but he didn't pick up because he was too busy handling everything else going to shit at the facility. But that's why I'm like, well, because she's the one that told Jang, or without directly saying it, was heavily implying Myongja was in the hospital. But I wonder, did he just think like, well, she has her connections? I don't know if he's full. Well, no, because I think they'd already just figured out that it was most likely her that put Myongja in that hospital. So I'm like, I don't know why let her know. Maybe it's a situation of she has her own connections that let her know that that was happening, and she was trying. That probably had not. Maybe it was just timing wise that it seemed like. Well, because the message came from someone. She was like, "This comes from Mr. Shiro," which I'm like, who is that? Maybe that's her own source or whatever. Maybe it's one of her people that's connected to Jang, because all of Jang's people got the message. Like all the connects. We even saw like Wang, the person who hooked him up with the fireworks. We see the tailor. Like everyone that has a connection in him. Like we've seen the messages get passed around. It's like, yeah, it's time to make our move. Because word got out about the plan involves all these people. So what that fully entails, we don't know. We get a little bit of it at the end of the episode where we see the lady that works at the bar. She ends up playing music on a record, and then we see all the people's lights turn on. I guess it's like supposed to get like everyone's supposed to be part of this operation, and I guess it's supposed to draw their attention away from the hospital so they can focus on more what's happening in town type of situation. I don't know if that was just like a, hey, everyone's asleep, but his music is waking people up. But like the lights are turning on every building as the camera zooms out. Seems like, yes, it's 100% on purpose. Like this is a united front of like, because it's supposed to all go down specifically at 6 o'clock. Because we learned that they will have 10 minutes to get out. And it's like, get on the truck, which Mr. Gu or Gapyeong is driving. And it's like, if you miss that time window, the truck's going to leave without you. So we have to all be on there. So it's time to move. Like there's a whole bunch of people and this could easily go wrong. So like I said, there's 4 episodes left in total, but there's only one episode left for part 1 of the season. So how this all plays out, will it succeed? Who will survive? Who will die? Who will get left behind? How that all plays out, we'll ultimately have to wait to see how the next episode plays out and where it leaves us, for the next week, because the last 3 episodes drop next Friday. It's Thursday at the time you're recording this. Yeah, we'll see how that all plays out and what that sets up for the end of part 1. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good